Rabbi Jonathan, I have class time. Do you? Yeah? Okay, so I assume that everybody is in the room. If not, they'll join presently. I want to welcome you guys to the inaugural year of Jerusalem University College's Summer Institute. And this is the course, Jesus the Galilean. And for better or worse, I am Wave Nunnally. And I just want to welcome each one of you into class. I apologize for its size and for the fact that due to its size, there will not be all that, it will not be all that interactive, but I will try to make it worth your time. In fact, when I do like a synoptic gospels class at the undergraduate level or at the seminary level, and when I'm instructing a group when we're studying together on site in Israel, I tell these different groups of people on two different continents, I tell them, if you leave this class with the same perspective on Jesus than you came in with, then I will have failed miserably in my goal for this group or this course. My heart is in that first, that opening statement in the syllabus that talks about seeing Jesus more clearly. So that the Spirit of God has more to work with on the inside of us to do what Paul said God's primary goal in our lives is, and that's that we be conformed to the image of Christ. Those are, I know those are really high, lofty goals, but that's what I'm shooting for. And according to the old commercial, you only go around once in life, so I'm going for broke on this one. How about you? How about we start in prayer? Do we join together in prayer? Father, we want to thank you for the privilege of coming before you and looking into and breaking the bread of life. We ask that you would overcome any kind of technological problems, the size of the class, my own inadequacy, and that you would get across to us the things that you have for us tonight and in the remaining 5 sessions that we have together in this course. We ask for your Spirit's help. We ask that you quicken our minds, that you give us the mind of Christ, and that together you take those things and you apply this material to our hearts in ways that challenge us and that encourage us and that move us in the direction of more careful and closer conformity to the image of your blessed Son. We give you this hour and a half that we have together. Help us to use it expeditiously and to the maximum amount that we can get out of it. And we ask all of this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Amen. I think that somebody just joined us, but I got a ding, Jonathan. So is there a way that we can turn those that messaging off? All right. So session 1, we're going to be dealing with primarily with matters geographical, the geographical context of the life and ministry of Jesus. That said, there's just a ton of various disciplines and areas that we can act.
Dr. Nunnally, I think you're muted.
How far back do I need to roll the tape?
You're good. You're good. Just
I heard there was a ton of disciplines that we...
Okay, there's a ton of disciplines that we can access, one of them being geography. There are others: language, history, ancient literature, archaeology, geology, meteorology, because there's a lot of stuff about weather in the Bible. One of my students they were doing a spoof on me in Israel, and they said, and what about cosmetology? I'm not sure about that. I know that we can find it in the extra biblical literature. We will get to that at some point. Jesus' mother, Miriam, was a dresser of women's hair. That's what one text says. I guess that means, ladies, that gives you carte blanche to spend as much money and as much time at the beauty salon as you want from now on, because it's totally legit. It's right there in the Holy Family. Anyway, we're going to take one of those slices of the contextual pie, the area, the discipline of geography, and we're going to be looking at that mostly tonight in our time together. Why do we want to contextualize Scripture? Well, we've been proof texting for hundreds of years, and that hasn't gotten us where we want to go, right? If it did, you wouldn't be in this class. You'd be happy as a clam, just living there where it's kind of pick and choose and sort of cafeteria style treatment of the Bible, and you take this and you don't take that. But no, we're looking for big picture context. Here's another point. All of communication is contextualized. It doesn't matter if you get a fax or you have somebody leave you a voicemail. It doesn't matter if you're having a conversation over coffee, face to face. You know, that used to happen once upon a time. Okay, never mind. It doesn't matter if it's a telegraph or if it's an email. There's always context behind the words that are coming at you. That then helps us to better understand what the person is trying to communicate who's talking to or writing to us or whatever. One of the questions that's asked most often when people get together and there's communication taking place is, what do you mean by that? So there's a phrase, there's a word, maybe there's a whole sentence or paragraph that is less intelligible that you want it to be. And what you're asking for is, give me bigger picture perspective. Give me context. Help me to get on board with what it is that you're trying to communicate to me. Okay, well, if that's true on the human to human level, is it also going to be true on the God to human level, meaning Bible? Survey says, yes, absolutely. I don't know if you ever noticed this before, but God doesn't speak to us in the Bible in some sort of a, Mars or some other alien kind of a dialect that it's impossible for us to understand. He just doesn't. Part of divine revelation is divine condescension so that he speaks to us on our level. You ever notice that with the ancient Israelites, God always speaks Hebrew? You ever notice that in the world of Jesus, and the lingua franca is no longer Akkadian, and it's no longer Aramaic, and it's no longer Greek, and it's no longer Latin, and it's no longer French, but this world that the New Testament goes out to is written in the lingua franca, or the common language, or you could call it the international language, or the trade language of the Mediterranean basin, which was in the first century Koine Greek. Yes. All right. So God's condescending to ancient Israelites to speak their language, the Hebrew language. God is condescending to the larger Mediterranean basin in the first century and speaking the language that the vast majority of people are going to be able to get on board with. God, when he's communicating to human beings, is trying to communicate in intelligible ways. Thank you very much, God. Because otherwise, how's he going to hold us responsible for all that divine revelation, those hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of words and stuff that are in the Bible? How's he going to hold us responsible for that if he communicates in a way that can't be understood, right? Okay, so there's going to then be, since communication is taking place, and communication is all about context, there's going to be context in the Bible that is either written in, it's coded in the Bible, or it's assumed that we know. Example, hate to bring up geography again, but all 40 plus authors of the Bible assume that we know the playing board. that we know the chessboard or the Monopoly board or whatever. They assume that we have a working knowledge of that. And so they just are being used by God as instruments to give divine revelation to us. And the assumption that they're making, because they don't provide maps, they don't provide charts and stuff, they don't give just long lists of directions like you would get on Google Maps to go somewhere. The Bible doesn't function like that. So we can say that the Bible assumes our working knowledge of geography, but there's a gigantic problem. There's an elephant in the room. What would that be? Their assumption is evidently not divinely inspired because it's wrong. We don't know biblical geography. Know why I know this? Every Sunday I sit in church. I don't see pastors using maps typically, and almost every place name is mispronounced. In fact, often they're just skipped because they're hard to pronounce. They're not in the English language. We don't know what they mean. And so, I mean, it can't really matter, right? Because those place names and all that stuff, it's not as important as for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, or, you know, the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life. So you just skip over the less familiar to get to the more familiar, and then everybody's happy, right? But that doesn't move the ball in our lives, guys. That's not moving us closer to the world of those original communicators of God's divine revelation, the writers of Scripture. So one of the things that we're going to need to do and that we want to do tonight is to get on board with the world, the playing field, the playing board, the world of the Bible, the geographical context into which God's divine revelation came, and especially the one that came through Jesus. So in session one, we're going to be dealing with the geographical context of Jesus' life and ministry. Largely, we'll be talking about stuff having to do with his early life, birth, location in Nazareth, and that sort of thing. So my encouragement to you is to boldly go beyond where no Bible college and no seminary does as a required course. In the entire United States, there's not one Bible college or Christian university or seminary, graduate school, etc., that requires the study of biblical geography. And I think that that's what's got us in the place that we are in now. Tonight, I'm hoping that you come to a point where you better appreciate that geographical component of the context and background of Jesus' life and ministry. Let me just ask you this. Have you ever noticed that in Jesus' teaching, his visual aids, his points of reference change depending on where he is? You have noticed that? As an example, I'm seeing some heads nod. It's really interesting to me. It's really, really cool to watch Jesus function in Galilee. There, it's primarily pastoral, it's primarily agricultural, and you hear about foxes have their holes, and birds of the air have their nets, and consider the lilies of the field, and a sower went out to sow seed. But when you get to an urban context like Jerusalem, it's about references to the gold on the temple, or it's about you build the monuments of the prophets, or you are like whited sepulchres or something like that. And you get this very clear bifurcation in terms of Jesus communicating to us that is totally dependent upon the location of that particular chunk of communication coming at us. Here's something, I just use that as an example. I'm not really going anywhere with it, but to use it as an example to kind of kickstart some of our thinking. And here's what I would like to challenge you to do in light of that just little brief conversation. And that is discipline yourself to geographically contextualize everything that Jesus said and did. In other words, take the lunatic challenge. If you're reading from the Gospel of John or Matthew, it doesn't make any difference. If you're reading something about what Jesus did or something that Jesus taught, doesn't make any difference. ask yourself this question: where's this happening? And then ask the next, this is an even more important question: why does Jesus choose to say this or do this at this particular location? When you start digging at, scratching at that geographical context behind the life and ministry of Jesus, you are going to get a clearer and a deeper understanding of whatever it is that you happen to be reading at that or studying at that particular point. I can promise you almost without fail that that will indeed occur. It will happen during this class. And again, if it doesn't, then I'm wasting your time and I'm not accomplishing my goals for the course. Let me share a screen now. I would like to, there are going to be some kind of, I don't know, context situation changes through the course of this class, class that we are doing tonight. And I want to vary the means of presentation in lots of different ways. And the first one that I want to do is I want to take a look at the journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem for Jesus' birth. And if you're all right with that, can everybody see it? I just need to see your head nod. See some examples. If you're able to see a slide that says Holy Family, Holy Journey. Okay. All right. I'm going to go to full screen then. Let's see. Okay. In the Gospel of Luke, it says a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that the world was to be taxed. So everybody went to his own, I guess, original hometown or point of origin to register for the census. Joseph, this is all Luke, by the way. I wrote an article not too long ago that is entitled The One and Only Christmas Story. Yeah, you're going to be watching a video of that or reading an article. You're going to be reading an article for that particular chunk of material next class period. So this time next week. But in that article, I made the point that Matthew, in his story about the early days of Jesus' life, does not actually record the birth. He jumps from the angelic appearance to Joseph all the way to a point at which Jesus has already been born in Bethlehem. So then Mark doesn't give any information about Jesus' early life, and nor does John. So the only story that we have of details of the actual kind of blow-by-blow or play-by-play version of Jesus' birth comes from the Gospel of Luke. So Joseph also went up from Galilee to the city of Nazareth, to Judea, to the city of David that is called Bethlehem. So he moves from Nazareth to Bethlehem because he was of the house and family of David in order to register along with Mary, who was engaged to him. The actual Greek reads betrothed, not engaged, and was with child. I want to look at the birth narratives a little bit later in the class tonight. It came about while they were there, the days were completed for her to give birth. So Luke is actually giving us the play-by-play analysis of Jesus' birth. Notice there in the Gospel of Luke, it came about while they were there. All the Jesus movies have the final contraction gripping Mary as they go past the Bethlehem population 503 sign. You know, it's like it happens on the very night, and they always getting there at night. I'm not sure why. That's Hollyweird, but it seems everybody seems to know very well that Jesus was born on the very night that they cruised into Bethlehem on the donkey. By the way, never mentioned in the New Testament. First time it's mentioned is in an apocryphal gospel called the Proto-Evangelium of James. All right, and so she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in cloths and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. We know the story, right? So there's a little bit of bibliographical information for you guys. Some of that you're going to be reading for next week's class. Okay, moving on. This is a super, super basic map that I want to use to track Jesus or Joseph and Mary's movements. Nazareth is listed right here. Everybody can see. Can you see my cursor moving? All right. So the journey starts in Nazareth. I want you to notice that in this map, as well as in basically every dictionary article, almost every commentary that you're going to get, they will at some point say that the Jews didn't go cut through the heart of Samaria. Instead, they dropped down into the Jordan Valley and they accessed Jerusalem by following the Jordan River down the Jordan Valley and then cut up through the Judean wilderness to come to Jerusalem. What's the problem with that? Part of the problem is that it almost doubles the length of the journey. It almost doubles the amount of time that the journey takes. And it basically, I don't know, it times 10 increases the danger of the journey. Why is that? Josephus, the first century Jewish historian, tells us that in this area of the Judean wilderness, that there were tons of robbers. Jesus even mentions it in Luke chapter 10, where it talks about the man who went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves. So Jesus references the danger of this part of the journey. There's a real problem with this, and the problem is geography and evidence. And we'll get to that at some point in the very near future. Bethlehem, this is the point of arrival. And for that, we're going to move further into a satellite map that gives us greater detail. This satellite map has actually been overlaid with a layer tint that gives you a better feel for altitude. And so the green, that's basically sea level, that's low. Anything that is yellow and gray, that's really high. So you've got a huge spine in the middle of the country right here that is very much elevated, going up to elevations of somewhere around 3,400 feet above sea level. Sea level would be at the Mediterranean, and then this is going to be 3,400 feet higher in altitude. Well, here's Nazareth, and then here's Bethlehem. Question is, how do you get from Nazareth to Bethlehem? Do you go all the way over here, go down the Jordan River, turn right at Jericho, come up to Jerusalem, and then hit the Patriarch's Ridge or the Way of the Patriarchs, go another 6 miles south to Bethlehem? Or do you cut straight from north to south, following the Way of the Patriarchs, very typical biblical road, cut through the heart of Samaria and come out at Bethlehem? That's a decent question. What I have done is I've taken that same map, stripped away the place names, and I've overlaid the travel route that I assume Joseph and Mary took. Why is that? Because it makes the most sense. It's the shortest distance between 2 points. So here at Nazareth, this is the Nazareth Ridge right here. This spear-shaped valley right here is the Jezreel Valley, what many evangelicals identify as the Valley of Armageddon. Debatable, but probably not a part of this class. At any rate, Jesus' parents, Joseph and Mary, drop down off of the Nazareth Ridge. They go through the Jezreel Valley. They go through the Jenin or Beit Hagan or Ibleam Pass, and then they snake their way past Shechem and Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal. They go past places like Shiloh, where the Ark of the Covenant tabernacle was for 367 years. They eventually come to, they go past Bethel and places like that, very important biblical sites, and they come to Jerusalem. Keep on going south another 6 miles until they come to Bethlehem, which is just off the main north-south road or the Way of the Patriarchs. While they're on this road, they're observant Jews, and so they're speaking together the words of Torah, um, and they are going to be obeying the law of Moses, or the Torah of Moses, that says, these words that I'm commanding you shall be on your heart. Teach them diligently to your sons. Talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and rise up. In other words, the word of God should be constantly on our lips, as opposed to a lot of the kind of weird stuff that we often engage in. So as Joseph and Mary are coming down the Nazareth Ridge and they're entering the Jezreel Valley, they've got to be talking about things like the big battle that took place here between Deborah and Barak and the Canaanites. They look over to Mount Tabor, and that's where the Israelite forces massed together. They look over here at the hill of Moreh, and they talk about the battle that Gideon fought. His forces joined together here and fought against the Amalekites, Midianites, and all the peoples of the east who were right on the southern edge of the hill of Moreh. And the Lord, with just 300 people, brought about a great victory. They probably, in the same context of Mount Gilboa here and the hill of Moreh, they talked about Saul, who was fighting the Philistines, and a very similar pitched battle with this Jezreel Valley between them. And it didn't turn out so well for Saul because he wasn't inclining his heart like Gideon was. And they had to have talked about obedience versus disobedience. They go past the Mount Gilboa here, and then they began to cut through Samaria. As they do, they skirt past this Dothan Valley where Joseph was thrown in a pit, and his brothers sold him into Egyptian slavery. They continue their journey until they get to the location of the blessings and curses of the law at the end of the book of Deuteronomy. Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal and Shechem, and those stories about the patriarchs like Jacob digging a well there. This is the way that people would talk, because we have this in Jewish literature outside the Bible. When they're on a journey, they take the opportunity to discuss events that are taking place as they journey along, as they pass by these locations. We eventually get down to the place of Shiloh, Livona right here and Shiloh right here. And there you talk about the prophet Samuel and his wicked sons and how they didn't follow, and Eli and his wicked sons and how they didn't follow the ways of the Lord. And Mary is great with child, and Joseph is probably saying, when the way that we're going to raise our son, Mary, he's not going in the direction of those wicked and disobedient sons of our ancestors. You continue to go on past Bethel, and where Jacob built an altar, and where he said, this is truly the house of God, the ladder joining man and God with angels ascending and descending. That story must have had to come up. All the stories that surround Jerusalem, there are so many in the Hebrew Bible, I don't even want to get started for time. And then they finally come to Bethlehem, where their ancestor David was from, and where God raised up great deliverance and then unified the people and brought revelation like the book of Psalms. And surely they were committing themselves to raising a child that would do those things, that would bring deliverance, that would unify the people of God, that would bring the people of God back to God in repentance, and that would bring a greater level of the presence of God and divine revelation. This is the kind of stuff that biblical journeys are made of. And this is the kind of stuff that I would like for you to become comfortable enough with both the Bible and the playing board on which the Bible was acted out, to be able to think in these terms. What happened here? What happened like this here before this particular story? It will always be an enlightening journey, I promise you. Now, in order for this journey to have taken place, we've got to get beyond one major sort of obstacle that we have managed to put in our own way, and that is this matter of Jews avoiding journeys through Samaria, preferring instead the Jordan River route that would not take them through Samaritan territory. So I want to migrate away from this, maybe stop share, and let's go to another screen here. Did Jews normally travel through Samaria in the time of Jesus? I hope you're having fun. I sure am. By the way, I'm not looking at you personally, so if you have to get up and get something to drink or use the restroom, please feel free. I'll never know what hit me. Fair enough? Awesome. All right. I'm going to go to full screen so that you get the best view of this. And just kind of review the majority position or the traditional position. You probably heard it from lecterns and from pulpits more times than you can count. Conventional wisdom is also going to say, look, the Jews were really concerned with ritual purity. The Samaritans were not, or they were viewed as being ritually impure by Jews. And so to avoid ritual impurity, Jews would go around Samaria. Also, Jews hated Samaritans and Samaritans hated Jews. Nothing new there. You got all kinds of stuff like that in the New Testament. Jesus calls the Samaritan who was a leper that he healed. Did only this foreigner come back to give glory to God? Or the story of the Good Samaritan, who is a surprise hero in the story. It's supposed to function that way. In the rabbinic version of those parables, it's always the Pharisee that comes by and saves the day. Jesus, though, is giving a surprise ending, and it's a Samaritan, totally unexpected, and you can bet he was keeping the attention of his listeners there. So racial tensions, religious differences, and finally security concerns, because we do hear about in the literature some problems with security as Jewish pilgrims were traveling in areas where there were Samaritans. That's the traditional position. You know what the problem with that is, though? It's all human logic applied to ancient modern human logic applied to ancient realities. There are no, count them, 0 texts that tell us that Jews avoided Samaria. In fact, quite the opposite. We have tons of texts from at least 3 different corpuses or corpora of literature, the New Testament, Josephus, and who is a first century Jewish historian, and the material from the early rabbis that tell us exactly the opposite. And that's what I wanted to survey with you just a little bit. Representative of that major section, this is what your college freshmen get when they go away to school. Gundry's Survey of the New Testament. To avoid Samaria, whose inhabitants the Jews despise, Jews often traveled this Jordan Valley road in going between Galilee and Judea. Remember the map that showed the journey of Joseph and Mary down the Jordan Valley route as opposed to through the heart of Samaria? That's what we looked at before. And very clearly, here's my cursor right over here in the area of Herod Philip. All right. And you go from Nazareth down the Jordan Valley route to Jerusalem and then ultimately to Bethlehem. So let's take a look at the New Testament and see if the New Testament as a corpus of literature bears out this claim that, well, Jews didn't go through Samaria. Well, in the Gospel of John, we hear this. This is the primary passage, I think, that is pointed to. He left Judea and departed to Galilee. He had to pass through Samaria. Most people say, well, it's because he had an appointment with the woman at the well, and he knew he had to be there in order to meet her. Otherwise, he would have gone the way that all of his other Jewish co-religionists would have gone, and he'd have gone the Jordan River route, but he had to meet her. So he came to the city of Samaria called Sychar, to Jacob's well. Jesus, being wearied from his journey, was sitting thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour. That's lunchtime, noon. A woman of Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said, give me a drink. All right, so there's Jesus in Samaria. But that's not the only time that Jesus shows up in Samaria, guys. That's John 4. Look at Matthew 10. Jesus said, don't go in the way of Gentiles and don't enter any city of the Samaritans. Why did he have to tell his disciples that? Because otherwise they probably would have. You don't give prohibitions where it's not typically going to happen. Anyway, here's another one in Luke 9. They entered a village of the Samaritans. Bam, another example. First century Jews going through Samaria and going through a city of Samaritans. Here's another one in Luke 17. It came about while he was on the way to Jerusalem, he was passing between Samaria and Galilee. I thought we avoided Samaria like the plague. Why get anywhere near it? No, there's Jesus again. It's not just John 4. It's Luke 17 as well. And then even after Jesus, in the book of Acts, we hear about a persecution that arose in Jerusalem, and the disciples were scattered. And so these went through the regions of Judea and Samaria. It's like, I guess they didn't get the email memo or something. You're not supposed to go there if you're Jewish. This is at a time when Christianity was all Jewish. These were all Jewish Christians who were following Jesus in up to Acts chapter 8 and on into up through about chapter 13. How about in Acts 8, we get Philip, who is one of the, not Philip the disciple, but Philip the deacon, one of the first 7 deacons that were selected. He went down to the city of Samaria. That's the capital. That's the hub of everything Samaritan, and began proclaiming Christ to them. Well, this ended up causing some major consternation back in Jewish Jerusalem, and they ended up sending Peter and John to check out and see what in the world was going on in the capital city of Samaria. But guess what? That's Jews again, Peter and John, pillars, leaders of the early church, and they're going right into the heart of Samaria. The apostles in Jerusalem heard that Samaria had received the word of God, so they sent to them Peter and John. Don't have to have special prayer, don't have to get some kind of special dispensation from the Pope, don't have to have special letters or whatever. Jews going into Samaria. And then not only that, but then if you go into Samaria, you got to leave Samaria. So they go all the way through Samaria. And guess what? It says they stopped at every village and preached to the Samaritans all the way back to Jerusalem. How cool is that? That's neat bridge building, right? That's neat middle wall of partition breaking down going on by the good news of the gospel. And so you got plenty of examples going on in the New Testament about Jews going in and around Samaria and Samaritan people. That's the New Testament. Let's take a look at another corpus of literature, the stuff from the early rabbis, from before, during, and just after the time of Jesus. Some of the earliest rabbinic stuff comes from a collection called the Tosefta, the additions to the Mishnah. And it says, Jewish herdsmen may leave cattle in the inns, the hotel, the Motel 6s of Samaritans. Well, where would that be? That's in Samaria. In the Babylonian Talmud, another collection, it's like World Book size set. It says, one may entrust an animal to a Samaritan shepherd, and one may seclude oneself with Samaritans, and one may keep an animal in the inns of Samaritans. Okay, another rabbinic text there. Here's another one, Jerusalem Talmud. There are 2 Talmuds. Babylonian, it was edited and published in Babylonia. The one in Jerusalem was edited and published in the city of Tiberias on the shore of the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. All right. Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer went down to a certain town inhabited by Samaritans. Wait a minute. This guy is, you mean not just the average rank and file, not just Christian followers of Jesus. This guy is a rabbi. He is really concerned about ritual purity. Remember the Pharisees and the Gospels? Your disciples are eating with hands that aren't washed. So this guy goes to a town inhabited by the Samaritans, has no problem whatsoever. Doesn't even have to stop at the border to get his passport checked. Jerusalem Talmud again. Rabbi Ishmael ben Yossi went to the town of Neapolis. Well, what is Neapolis? It is right at Sychar, and it is the location. The old location was named Shechem, and it's where Jacob dug Jacob's well. So we're right here in the heart of Samaritan territory, and he goes down to the town of Neapolis. What are these rabbis, these exalted religious leaders who are so very much concerned about ritual purity? What are they doing traveling in and through Samaria? Okay, here's another rabbinic text. Rabbi Abayu dispatched Rabbi Yitzchak ben Yosef to bring wine from the area of the Samaritans. Well, he had to get there, and then he had to come back, bringing wine that was evidently grown by, produced by, yep, you got it, Samaritans. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar was dispatched by Rabbi Meir to bring wine from the area of the Samaritans. Here's another text. Rabbi Akiva, he was born in the late 1st century, was martyred in the early 2nd century in the Second Jewish Revolt. He says, pomegranates from Badan are supposed to be considered orlah. Orlah is a technical term meaning that when you plant a tree, the first 3 years that it bears fruit, you're forbidden to eat it. And the 4th year onward, then you can eat that. Orlah means basically uncircumcised fruit is the literal translation. But the point is, Jews own land and are growing crops and then are even tithing from those crops to the temple. And those farms are in Samaria. Jews own land in Samaria and are using it to produce agricultural crops. Here's another text in rabbinic stuff. You see, this stuff is all over the place. It's not one text here or there. It's not just, I'm just chose my favorite ones and taking them out of context. There's tons of this stuff. Rabbi Yossi says, pomegranates of Badan and the leeks of Geba are to be considered orlah. Here's another rabbi weighing in on this, and he's saying that you got to obey Jewish law even when the produce is being grown in Samaria. Very, very interesting stuff. Another text from the Mishnah, the law of the field of possession. This is from the book of Leviticus. Applies whether a man dedicated a field in the desert of Mahuz or in the gardens of Sebaste. Now, Sebaste is the Greek version of the name of the capital city that is called in the New Testament Samaria. Samaria. It's the same place that Philip went. So then Jewish law is being exercised regarding property in Samaria. I hope you're getting the big point here because there's a lot of evidence that we've got going on here. Cooked food prepared by Samaritans is permitted. Do you remember when Jesus was in Samaria? The disciples went away to a nearby village to get food. And when they came back, they said, here, Jesus, here's some food. And Jesus said, my food is to do the will of God. I'm plenty full. But they went in and got food. What's the reason for that? We hear about in in rabbinic literature, we hear that the rabbis had decreed that food prepared by Samaritans is totally legal for Jews to purchase and to consume. Samaritan territory is ritually clean and it's ritual immersion baths. The word is mikvaot. It's dwellings, and listen to this, most importantly for this little bit of the study, it's paths. In other words, the roadways where people walk are assumed to be ritually clean. Okay, so there's the conventional wisdom. Samaritans are unclean, so Samaria is unclean. Jews can't then go through Samaria because they would become ritually impure. The rabbis themselves, the earliest stuff, look at this, the Tosefta, and then the Jerusalem Talmud, texts from the land of Israel, from Jewish religious leaders, are telling us that roadways, paths, roadways through the land of Samaria are to be considered ritually pure. That means Jewish travel through Samaria, totally normal, legal, and acceptable. Reish Lachish said, a strip of land inhabited by Samaritans separates Judea and the Galilee. We know that's true. Remember the map? You have Galilee at the top. You have Samaria, which is the little white part of the Oreo cookie. And then the black part at the bottom, that's Judea, a layer cake of Jewish inhabitation, Samaritan inhabitation, and then Jewish inhabitation again. Jewish in Galilee and Judea, but Samaria is situated right in the middle of those two. So he's accurately describing what we know as the demographic and the political layout of the land. Reish Lachish said, a strip of land inhabited by Samaritans separates Judea and the Galilee, and it is impossible to travel from one land to the other without traversing or going through this strip. Are you hearing what the early rabbis are saying? You got to go through Samaria to get from Galilee to Judea or Judea to Galilee. You got to go through the white part of the Oreo cookie. Now let's take a look at Josephus. Let's just see how much of each of these different corpuses of literature corroborate or confirm the testimony of the others. So far, the New Testament is majorly on board. Can I get somebody say amen? I know you're muted, but you can just do it to yourself. Good. All right. Now, what about rabbinics, the sayings of the early rabbis? Yep, they're checking off on it too. You own land, you can grow crops, you tithe from there, you can travel through there, you can buy their food and eat it. Everything is totally, full on regarding travel through Samaria. Now, Josephus, let's keep in mind, Josephus is a first century Jew born in the land of Israel who was a contemporary of the apostles, and he's writing at the same time the New Testament is being written. Has everybody got this? This is an important source. He's going to give us almost like word videos of what goes on in the land of Israel, kind of the background, the behind the scenes stuff that helps to illuminate New Testament realities. Very important source. So Josephus tells us about an event that actually is recorded also in 1 Maccabees, chapter 5. So Josephus tells us that Judah Maccabee, remember Judas Maccabeus? He gathered together all the Israelites in Gilead. Where's that? It's on the east side of the Jordan River, kind of just below the Sea of Galilee, to go for the purpose of going to the land of Judah. So they came to Ephron. Wait a minute. Ephron is mentioned in the Gospel of John. It's also called Ephraim. It's modern Tibeh, and it is in the heart of Samaria. Whoops. You mean this ultra-radical Orthodox guy who's fighting against the Greeks because he wants to be an observant Jew, and he's taking people through Samaria, this Judah Maccabee? That's what First Maccabees says, and Josephus records it as well, borrowing from First Maccabees. So they came to Ephraim, and they, at another point, kind of retelling the same story, they crossed the Jordan because they were over in Gilead. So they went across the Jordan Valley. Where did they cross? Well, there's a ford of the Jordan River that's near Beit Shan or Scythopolis or Beth Shan. It's in our English Bibles. All right, so they're going instead of going straight south down the Jordan Valley. Instead, they're cutting from east to west, and they're headed toward the Jezreel Valley. Why is that? Because he kept on rallying the laggards until he came to the land of Judah. So you put all this together, and they started in Gilead, they crossed the Jordan at Beit Shan, they went into the Jezreel Valley, they cut through that pass that Joseph and Mary would use later, that Jenin Beit Hagan pass, and then they follow the same route that Joseph and Mary would have followed, the one that I showed you on that satellite map and outlined it in yellow pen. Okay, here's another Josephus. Jonathan, this is again in the days of the first revolt, where Jews are revolting against Rome, 66 to 70 AD. Jonathan and those who were with him when they left Tiberias, Tiberias is on the Sea of Galilee, so that's Jordan Valley kind of territory, and came to Dabarita. This is where it's important to know the land of Israel geography. Dabarita is a town that's on the north side of Mount Tabor. It's very close to Nazareth. It's in the Jezreel Valley. So how did this guy named Jonathan, how did he go to Jerusalem? The goal was to get to Jerusalem, arrived at Jerusalem. He cuts through the Jezreel Valley and goes through Samaria. It's the only way to make sense out of this narrative here in Josephus's autobiographical work, The Life of Josephus. Take a look at this, and this is going to show, here's Tiberias. They go past Dabarita right there, and this is Mount Tabor, that little circle, upraised circle. Then you go, you keep following the road, and you go through the Jenin Beit Hagan Ibleam Pass, and you go the same way that Joseph and Mary would go, would have gone back in the days just before Jesus' birth. That's as opposed to if you were in Tiberias and the goal was to avoid Samaria entirely, you go straight down the Jordan Valley route. Here's Jericho. You can see the oasis right there. You turn right, go up through the Judean wilderness, infested with thieves, with robbers, and you end up at Jerusalem.
Have what set up? You didn't even get home that long ago. You were doing other stuff too, so don't even make it about you.
Hello, Renee.
So,
Okay, continuing with Josephus. At a village called Gemma, that's Jenin, also it's called Beit Hagan. Situated in the Great Plain, that's what Josephus calls the Jezreel Valley, the Great Plain of Samaria, a Galilean, one of a large company of Jews on their way up to the festival, it was Passover time, was murdered. What's he doing in Jenin? Why is he going through Samaria? Here again, here's the pass right here, cutting straight through there and into the heart of Samaria. Josephus, in his Life of Josephus, for rapid travel, it was essential to take that route by which Jerusalem may be reached in 3 days from Galilee. And he's talking about cutting through Samaria. I'm giving you the references here because you can always jot those down, and you can go to a complete works of Josephus. They're available used for $6, $8 on Amazon, and you can have them shipped to your doorstep. And you can read this stuff in English at any time that you like. An incredible source for the geography of the land of Israel and also for the backgrounds of New Testament realities. Check this one out, Antiquities of the Jews. This is the longest of Josephus's works. It's in 20 books, actually. It was the custom of the Galileans when they came to the holy city of Jerusalem at the time of the festivals to take their journeys through the country of the Samaritans. Hope you see this. It was the custom. It was standard operating procedure for Galilean Jews to journey through Samaria to get to Jerusalem for Passover, Pentecost that just completed, and Tabernacles. So we can skip the conclusions if you want to, but I'm hoping that you are kind of getting a feel for this idea that the New Testament, the material from the early rabbis, and then from this first century historian, Jewish historian who grew up in the land of Israel and who was a contemporary of the apostles, that he's giving to you guys all kinds of really interesting evidence that Jews not only did not avoid Samaria, they preferred going that way. No evidence in favor of the traditional or the majority or the common sense, quote unquote, the conventional wisdom theory, but tons of literary evidence in favor of the Jews did travel. That's the reason why when we were looking at the travel of Joseph and Mary just prior to the birth of Jesus, that they were traveling through Samaria and not down the Jordan River route. All right. how is it, question for you guys, I'm going to stop share. How is it that Jesus is born in Bethlehem, but he ends up in Nazareth? And he grows up in Nazareth. He's well known in Nazareth. His ministry kind of launches from Nazareth over to Capernaum. He eventually returns to Nazareth to preach in their synagogue in Luke chapter 4. So how is it that this transference takes place, Bethlehem, all the way down in Judea, as opposed to where he grows up and where his ministry begins in Nazareth, that's in the heart of Galilee? One of the things that we're told by Matthew tells us that while Jesus, Joseph, and Mary were still in Bethlehem, that there was an attempt on Jesus' life. This is Matthew chapter 2, by Herod the king. He's evidently threatened by this baby who has been born king of the Jews when he was only appointed by the Roman Senate as king of the Jews. And so an angel of the Lord appears to Joseph in a dream, Matthew chapter 2, and he says, "Arise and take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt." And so Joseph does this. And then at some point when they're living in Egypt, an angel of the Lord, another appearance of the angel to Joseph. It says, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph and said, "Arise and take the child and his mother and return to the land of Israel, because those who sought the child's life are dead." But then, and this is right around chapter 2, verse 22. If you got your Bible in front of you, in chapter 2, around verse 22, it says that whenever, when Joseph heard that Archelaus was ruling in place of his father Herod, then he withdrew to the district of Galilee and dwelt in the city of Nazareth. What Matthew is telling us in real shorthand kind of way is, okay, Jesus and Joseph and Mary barely escaped with their lives from this wicked King Herod the Great. But King Herod the Great died in 4 BC. This is what's not told in the New Testament. He died in 4 BC, and so Augustus Caesar, his best friend, was the executor of his will, and he divided Herod the Great's kingdom up into tetrarchies, or kind of mini kingdoms, under Herod's 3 surviving sons. Herod had a bunch of sons, but he killed them all. He had 10 wives, and he killed all of them too. He killed people that threatened him. This is not something that's totally unique to Matthew chapter 2. And by the way, yes, your new friend Josephus, he chronicles all of this stuff. So this isn't hearsay. This is not something that's just, I'm making this up because it's convenient for the narrative. This is something that I'm borrowing. I'm getting this stuff from Josephus. Another thing that Josephus tells us in his Antiquities of the Jews, book 17, is that Archelaus was absolutely cutthroat. And all the way through book 18 and into book 19, he's chronicling the events of the life of Archelaus, who was an absolute butcher. In fact, the Romans, after only 10 years, Herod served for over 30 years in office as the king of the Jews, 10 years, and the Romans deposed Archelaus for excessive cruelty and sent him into exile. So Archelaus was even more off the chain than his father Herod the Great. And he didn't have the strong horses on the inside to carry his baggage for him in Rome and protect him. And so he was sent into exile after only 10 years in office. That was the Archelaus that was avoided by Joseph. Wise decision on his part. Archelaus went around kind of executing people that his father had grudges against, a lot like Solomon did for David. When Solomon succeeded David, ascended to the throne, and he's killing all these people that gave David a hard time. So Archelaus is doing this, and Joseph says, we're not getting caught up in that. We're going to go to Galilee. It was under a different sun. It was in a long distance from from Bethlehem. And back in those days, there weren't any passports to scan, no body chips or anything like that. And so there's no way that anybody's going to connect the dots between this young mother and her son and this carpenter who show up and start living and working in Nazareth and make that connection with some event that took place years before in a town way down south under the rule of a completely different ruler. And so it's really interesting what's going on behind the scenes, that the New Testament just sort of assumes that we know geography, we know geopolitics, we know the history, we know about these descendants of Herod the Great that ruled in his place, and we can put all of that together in a nice, neat little package, and we're so good to go. But that's the part of the story that we typically don't get. You see how background, how context provides a perspective on even the simplest little, point of reference. He withdrew to the district of Galilee and lived in a city called Nazareth. Just explodes with meaning and contour and reality, y'all. These are not bedtime stories. These are not mythos. This is not myth, as in Greek and Roman kind of world. This is not legendary stuff. This is the stuff that when you put Bible together with what we know about ancient history and literature and geography, this stuff just fits together like hand and glove. That's telling us all of these details that fit, that make sense, and that never contradict, that always really dovetail well with the stuff outside the Bible. This is telling us something about the nature of the Bible. They're not bedtime stories. They're not myth and legend. This is not make-believe. This is not the kind of stuff like when I was a kid, I concluded as a teenager, well, the Bible was written by a bunch of old men who were too tired and worn out to have any fun. They're trying to keep the rest of us from having a good time. This is not the point of the Bible. I found that out years later, but it was only after putting myself through a lot of misery in the process. All right. I want to share screen with you for just a second. Again, is that all right? If you're bored, again, just pretend that you got to go to the restroom and take a break. But we're going to do share screen again, and I'm going to go to, let's see. Maybe it's this. No, I guess not. Let's go back to share screen. Wow.
You
Right.
were sharing your screen just a second ago. It just looked like it was the end of the slideshow.
Yeah. Nope. I had that queued up and I'm not exactly sure what happened to it. So it's this. And let me go back to, are you able to see this Celsus True Doctrine or no?
No, right now we're looking at you.
Okay. All right. Okay, share screen again. Okay, then this is what I want to do. I'm going to read this to you because for some reason my computer ditched it. So here we go. In the late 1st century AD, there was a pagan that was born whose name was Celsus, not Celsius. That's about temperature. It's Celsus. He wrote a book in the early second century called True Doctrine. And in this book, he's arguing with a Christian leader. And this is what he says about Jesus' origin. It says that he fabricated the story of his birth from a virgin. He came from a Jewish village and from a poor country woman who gained her substance by spinning. She was driven out by her husband, who was a carpenter by trade. When she was convicted of adultery, she had a child by the name of a Roman soldier by the name of Pantera. And after she had been driven out by her husband, and while she was wandering disgracefully, she secretly bore Jesus. Now, because Jesus was poor, he hired himself out as a laborer in Egypt. Bam. Do you notice that the things that, even though this is backhanded compliment kind of stuff, this is backhanded corroboration. He's not attempting to corroborate the gospel narrative, but we hear about birth from a virgin. We hear about him coming from a Jewish village, that he was the child of a poor country woman. We hear about this woman who supposedly some irregularity about the birth of Jesus as not being legitimate. We hear about charges of adultery. We're also hearing about Jesus going down, being at some point in Egypt. That's where the narrative in the Gospel of Matthew comes in, because Matthew says that Jesus, Joseph, and Mary fled to Egypt in Matthew chapter 2, fleeing Herod the Great and his killing of the innocents in the area of Bethlehem. So it says he hired himself out as a laborer in Egypt, and there he learned certain magical powers which the Egyptians are proud to have. He returned full of pride. Notice how, again, unintentionally, he's corroborating the Gospel of Matthew, who he's not quoting. He's corroborating Matthew's version of the story that Jesus, Joseph, and Mary came back from Egypt and settled in the land of Israel. He returned full of pride in these powers, and he gave himself the title of God. Isn't that interesting? All right, here's some stuff from the early rabbis. This is from the Tosefta. It is taught, that text that we looked at earlier. It is taught that Rabbi Eliezer said to the sages, "Did not Ben Stada bring spells from Egypt in a cut in his flesh?" This is all code language, but Ben Stada is a nickname for Jesus, and he brought spells from Egypt in a cut in his flesh. He came back from Egypt. Unintentional corroboration. And then we have the Babylonian Talmud. Jesus escaped to Egypt, and a teacher has said Jesus the Nazarene practiced magic and led Israel astray. So we have reference from a late first, early second century pagan philosopher, Celsus. We also have references by the early rabbis who are saying that the same thing, the same story. So Matthew, Celsus, and the rabbis are all making reference to this Jesus being in Egypt and then returning from Egypt. This is corroborating that part of the story that we get from the Gospel of Matthew in chapter 2. I think that what I want to do is maybe skip a little bit. I knew that I wouldn't be able to do everything that I wanted to do tonight, but what I would like to do is I would like to take you to Galilee and show you around a little bit of Galilee. Are you able to see this share screen, giving thanks to God?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for your help, guys. All right, I'm going to go full screen. And again, we're looking at this kind of, I don't know, flesh-colored area called Galilee. Nazareth is kind of in the heart of it. It's right in the middle. Again, Samaria is the white of the Oreo cookie. And then there's Judea, that's the bottom part of the black of the Oreo cookie. And I want to explore with you some more these geographical connections of Jesus' early life. In the book of Isaiah, this is quoted in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 4, Isaiah says, there will be no more gloom for her who was in anguish. In earlier times, he treated the land of Zebulun and Naphtali. We're talking about Galilee. These are tribal allotments around the area. But later on, he will make it glorious by the way of the sea on the other side of the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The Gospel of Matthew talks about departing for the regions of Galilee. He came to a city called Nazareth in Galilee. It was spoken through the prophets he would be called a Nazarene. Let's just take a look at some of the geographical components using video that Jesus would have been familiar with. We want to put ourselves into his eye sockets. We want to look at the ground, the same ground that Jesus looked at. We can do this when we travel to Israel and when we are on the bus day after day and going from location to location, studying the Bible in the original context on site where it happened. But because of travel restrictions and because I don't have time to take you there tonight, we're going to do that by virtue of video. We're looking at the same imagery that we looked at before. This is satellite photography or satellite imagery. And we are looking here at that kind of a spear-shaped Jezreel Valley or Valley of Armageddon, if you prefer. Now, some of the major features are, here's the beginning of Samaria right here in this uplifted limestone mountainous country right here. Here's that mountain pass that you go through that we talked about before. That guy named Jonathan was going to take it. Judah Maccabee took it. Joseph and Mary took it. Jesus would take it on occasion. Here's the Nazareth Ridge. It's a big, long strip of uplifted limestone. And the reason it's called the Nazareth Ridge is because I've got it circled in yellow. That's the city of Nazareth. More major components is this is a mountain chain called Mount Gilboa. It's not a mountain peak, it's a mountain chain. This is the hill of Moreh right here. This is Mount Tabor. We've looked at some of this stuff before. Up here in the upper right-hand corner, that's the Sea of Galilee that you're seeing there. So the first thing that we want to take a look at is the Nazareth Ridge and Mount Tabor. So we're going to be looking here, and we'll be looking at Mount Tabor right here. Nazareth Ridge and Mount Tabor. There's wheat growing in the foreground. Maybe remember the story of Gideon, how he was beating out the wheat in the wine press. Jesus talks about the wheat being fields being white with harvest. It's wheat. Okay, here's the Mount Tabor right here. That's the Mount of Transfiguration, also in some people's thought, and this is the monastery and Church of Transfiguration. I'll speed this up just a little bit. Here's that Mount Tabor, and this is the Nazareth. Whoops, let me go back again. This is the Nazareth Ridge. Mount Tabor and the Nazareth Ridge, they're right side by side. Everything that you see before that is Jezreel Valley. So when Jesus is growing up in Nazareth, he's seeing all of this stuff. He can have a picnic right there on the precipice of the mountain that people would eventually try to push him off in Luke chapter 4. Here it is again, the Nazareth Ridge. But when, as a kid, you want to walk out and just kind of get a good a view of a wonderful piece of property, that's where Nazareth is right there. You can see all this from up above. Okay. Now we're going to look at Nazareth, the city of Nazareth, specifically the Church of Annunciation that's built over the traditional home of Mary, and Mount Precipice, the traditional location where Jesus was taken to be thrown off and put to death in Luke chapter 4, and also that hill of Moreh that we saw here in this satellite photo. The hill of Moreh here, Mount Tabor there, Nazareth Ridge right here, and this is the Jezreel Valley. So take a look at the video. This is the Church of Annunciation. It's built over the remains of a Crusader period church. That's King Arthur period, Richard Lionheart. But that church is also built over top of Byzantine remains that go back to the 3rd, 4th, 5th centuries AD. There are 1st century caves that were inhabited in the 1st century underneath the church. So we're going to fast forward just a little bit on this and give you a chance to take a look at the environs of this. All of this is modern Nazareth. Nazareth in Jesus' day only contained about 400 people. We know this because the graveyard has been located. That's the edge of the city because Jews don't bury inside of the city limits. Today, the city of Nazareth is somewhere around 70,000 people. So it's gigantic compared to Jesus' day. Very small village. No major roads run through the Nazareth Ridge. They all skirt around it because it was too difficult to travel going that way. So it's kind of a backwater town. It's a town that if you were a wise man, as Joseph was, you might select a town like this off the beaten path so that kind of Jesus could grow up in obscurity. He wouldn't be hunted down by the authorities. Okay, now you see the edge of the Nazareth Ridge. We were looking at it from the valley and before, and now this is Mount Precipice right here. This is the highest peak and the place where tradition, it's only a medieval tradition, so we're not sure of that. But anywhere along here, Jesus could have been put to death by the townspeople. In the mist, in that haze, that's Jezreel Valley stuff, all of this. But we're simply looking at the perspective from two different directions. Nazareth down, and then before we were looking from down in the valley back up at the Nazareth Ridge, kind of looking south to north. All right, I'm going to move on to the next. Now we're going to take a look at Shunem and Nain. You can see both of these cities, or the area where both of these cities are, from the Nazareth Ridge. So again, we're looking at if Jesus had a box seat for the major events of biblical history, these are the things that he could see without even going far from home. Take a look at, we're going to look from here, the Nazareth Ridge, and we're going to be looking at Shunem. This is the hill of Moreh. Shunem is on the south side. Nain is on the exact opposite side, but on the north side of the hill of Moreh. And Nazareth is right there with a view toward both. This is the Arab village of Shunem. This is the place where the prophet Elisha raised the woman's only son from the dead in the book of 2 Kings. Again, the Jezreel Valley in this area here. And when you kind of swing around, now we're looking from the other side of the village, and we're looking north. Here's the hill of Moreh. It's a series of 7 extinct volcanoes whose cones have collapsed in on one another. This city is called in Arabic today Sulam. And so the Arabic toponym or place name has preserved the biblical name Shunem, Sulam, Shunem, with Moreh back behind it, looking north. Not sure what my image is doing there, but bear with me. In a second, we're going to be turning around. We're looking north now, but we're going to be looking south. Now we're looking south across the Jezreel Valley. Some people will call this already the Herod Valley. This is Mount Gilboa here, and you can see that from the Nazareth Ridge. This is where King Saul was killed by the Philistines at the end of the book of 1 Samuel. Now we're going to cut across by helicopter all the way across from the south side of the Hill of Moreh to the north side of the Hill of Moreh. Beautiful country, a lot of it reforested. And when we get to the north side of the Hill of Moreh, you will see the city of Nain, or the modern name in Arabic is Nin, N-I-N, preserving the ancient place name. Only shows up one time in the Bible. That's, I believe it's Luke chapter 7. And the reason why it's there is, and we saw it just a second ago. We saw Mount Tabor. So I'm going to run it back just a little bit and let you get a perspective on, there it is, Mount Tabor in the upper left, right there. So you know the Nazareth Ridge is just off the screen to the left or to the north. So Nin, this is mentioned in Luke chapter 7 as the location where Jesus raised, again, a woman's only son from the dead. Images of Elisha dancing in your head, they should be, because that's intentional. I think Jesus intentionally chose this location, the Hill of Moreh, to raise a woman's only son from the dead, the same way that one of the great prophets of the north, one of the patron saints of Jesus' day, would raise the only son of a woman from the dead just on the other side of the hill. Jesus in the Gospel of Luke is going around and intentionally duplicating the miracles of these two great patron saints of the northern kingdom, Elijah and Elisha, and he's doing this on a regular basis in the Gospel of Luke. It's a wonderful study to go through and compare those miracles on the part of Jesus and on the part of Elijah and then Elisha. So Nin or Nain. Just off the left side of the screen is Mount Tabor, and just a little bit further, not much further than that, is the Nazareth Ridge. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the city, not just the valley of Jezreel, but the city of Jezreel. This is going to be the summer home of Ahab and Jezebel. It's also going to be the place where the event with Naboth's vineyard and all of that occurs. So Jezebel is killed here also, according to the book of 2 Kings. And this is all in God's response to the killing of a righteous man, Naboth, by Ahab and Jezebel, who are trying to steal his property. We will also see the Herod Valley that's between the Hill of Moreh and Mount Gilboa. We'll see the Hill of Moreh itself, and we'll see again the city of Shunem. Again, just to get our coordinates on the map, here's the Nazareth Ridge, and we will be looking at, in this video, we'll be looking at the Hill of Moreh right here. We'll be looking at Shunem, and we'll be looking at this Jezreel Valley, and specifically this Beit Shan Valley or Herod Valley, that part that connects up over off the screen to the Jordan Valley. Here's Beit Shan, where Saul and his sons' bodies were displayed by the Philistines after they were killed here on Mount Gilboa. This is Gideon's spring right here, the spring of Herod, Judges chapter 7. All right, I'm going to try to hurry because I've got about 5 minutes. All right, this is Jezreel, the city, the summer capital of Ahab and Jezebel. Here's a nice spot where you can sit if you're with a group and you can review all these biblical events that are taking place, and they're right there in front of you. I mean, we're talking Monopoly board stuff here. Incredible, amazing views of beautiful country. Again, all of this is the city of Jezreel. Large tell, as as ancient sites go for the Old Testament period. Okay, here's the Harod Valley. Here's the hill of Moreh. Right there is Shunem. On the opposite side, on the north side, would be Nain, right? If you could see through, if Moreh was translucent, you could see through it. Now we're looking toward the city of Beit Shan and the Jordan Valley. That's off to the east. This is Mount Gilboa right here. Right around this corner right here is Gideon Spring, or the Spring of Harod. In Judges chapter 7, you can see some archaeological excavation that has gone on here. This is Naboth's vineyard. This is the death of Jezebel. This is where Elijah ran from Mount Carmel all the way to Jezreel. I think he was in good shape, y'all. After his contest with the prophets of Baal and Asherah, and he ran in front of the King Ahab's chariot all the way to Jezreel the city, not Jezreel the valley. Here's where your bus is going to park when you're there in person. Walk straight through these trees and right over to that little area that it gives you the wonderful overlook. Just on the other side of the valley from here, up at the top of the screen, that's going to be your Nazareth Ridge in the city of Nazareth. All right, good enough for that one. Now we're going to look at the Nazareth Ridge, Hill of Moreh, Howard Valley, Mount Gilboa. Let's see what we can do here quickly. We're on the Nazareth Ridge right now, and the camera is going to pan over in the direction that where we just came from in the previous video. Just around the corner here is Mount Tabor. Here's Mount Moreh. Right there is Nain. Here's Mount Gilboa over here. Between Mount Moreh and Mount Gilboa is that Harod Valley, or that extension of the Jezreel. We'll let it go through. It's going to pan one more time so that now that you've got your coordinates, you can pick those out on your own. Okay, Jezreel Valley, Tabor just to the left here, Mount Moreh, Mount Gilboa, the Harod Valley, beautiful agriculture, incredible location. I think it's one that you're going to love when you're there in person. All right. Sepphoris, it's 3.5 miles north of the Nazareth Ridge and Nazareth, the city. The valley that it lies in, Cana, where Jesus turned the water into wine, or if you're a teetotaler, the wine into water, it's your call. And then the Nazareth Ridge yet again. So we're going to be looking from the Nazareth Ridge to Sepphoris, across the Beit Netophah Valley, that's this horseshoe-shaped valley right here, and Cana of Galilee. Just as a kind of a point of interest and give you some background, you know, the steward of the feast came to Jesus and said, "This is amazing. Most people wait until everybody's drunk and then they give their worst wine because they can't tell. What you've done is you've saved the best wine for last." Well, this is what the rabbis have to say about that very location. 16 miles in every direction from Sepphoris, that includes Cana of Galilee, is the real land that the Bible talks about flowing with milk and honey. In other words, this is the most lush place. This is the Champagne district of France. This is the Napa Valley of California. This has the best wine of any place in the country. And what Jesus is being told by this guy who lives there is, you've topped it all. And that's exactly what you would expect from the master, right? All right, so we're going to start out right here. And this is the regional capital of Sepphoris, capital of the district of that Nazareth is in. When we go there, we stand on top of this roof so you get the best possible view. of all the area around the Beit Natofa Valley, the most lush agriculture in the whole country, according to the early rabbis, that this is the real land flowing with milk and honey. Here you can see an extensive archaeological excavation has been ongoing for years and years. And that's really not what we're even here to see, but incredible mosaic floors, Roman roads with markets on either marketplace on either side. Now we're seeing the Beit Natofa Valley, and right there is Cana. It's going to come around again, so you'll see it again. Cana of Galilee, right there. We are, when we're at Sepphoris, we're 3.4 miles north of Nazareth. If you get to Cana of Galilee, you're 9 miles. Go across this Beit Natofa Valley, you're 9 miles from the city of Nazareth. And you'd be going right across here. That's the way the road would run in the first century. How do we know? Because of the lay of the land and because human beings take the path of least resistance. That's where people with metal detectors find the brads that come out of ancient sandals. Here's the Nazareth Ridge right here, guys. I'm going to stop it and run it back just a second so you get a really good perspective on Nazareth Ridge realities. We're at Sepphoris, or Tzipori in Hebrew, and we're looking straight back south. We're north of Nazareth now, 3.4 miles north, and we are looking back at the Nazareth Ridge right there. I hope that that gives you a better perspective on John chapter 2 and the wedding at Cana, or Cana. Is a Roman period theater there. It's built in the Greek style, built into the side of the hill, which is really kind of interesting. Romans stealing from Greeks. Imagine that. All right. Well, the next time that we are together, we're going to be talking about more of Jesus' upbringing and the kind of Galilee that Jesus grew up in. Was it indeed mostly Gentile, like we've heard before? Was it mostly Greek speaking and Greek in culture, as we have heard before? Or is it largely poor people, peasants that are just eking out a day-by-day existence? Is it mostly Greek, or is it Aramaic speaking? Is it sort of like less Jewish, as in the people in the area of Galilee, are they less observant? Are they less meticulous? Are they less educated? And all of this stuff that we hear about from sometimes sermons, but even from technical, like Bible dictionaries and commentaries on biblical books and that sort of thing, articles written by scholars. We're going to take a look at all of those things, and we're going to get a good perspective on the kind of Galilee that Jesus actually grew up in. Look, I want to thank y'all for your interest in the subject. Thanks for your attention. I'm going to try to make everything that we do as visual as possible. And sometimes the technology works well, sometimes not as well. That's all on me. That's totally my bad. But we are going to continue to trust God to move the ball in all of our lives to help us to better understand this most important life ever lived, whose birth and death basically marked the epochs, and who had the greatest impact on human history of any other person that walked the planet. I think that it's well worth our time. It's worth busting a few knuckles and spending our energies doing this. And I'm trusting that the Lord to help all of us as we encounter this material, the literature, the geography, the visuals, that he's going to move the ball in our lives, and he will have more to work with to more completely conform us to the image of his blessed Son. God bless you guys. Thanks for surviving the first class. We've got 5 more after this. I'm looking forward already to seeing you. Same time, same bat station next week for round 2. God bless you richly. Have an awesome week serving him, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Great
you.
job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure
Thank
entirely.
you.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. Blessings to you.
Thank
God
you.
bless. Thanks.
Rabbi Jonathan, you hung in the whole time, man. What's up with that?
Thank you. It was wonderful, Dr. Nunnally. Incredible.
Hey, it's my
Thank you
pleasure.
so much.
Thanks for your help.
Wonderful shots.
I
Absolutely.
think maybe we'll
wonderful shots.
communicate a little bit after class sometime later this week or first of next week so that I can iron out some of the issues that I had on my end that maybe you guys couldn't even see.
Sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a good week, Rod and Todd and Ken and David, Bethany.
Thanks for teaching us.
See you later, Senora Da Silva.
Thank you.
Goodbye, Matt and John and Jane and Lisa. I feel like I'm on the Waltons. See you next week, Rachel and Miriam and Kevin. Good night, John Boy. Good night, Elizabeth.
It's a pleasure to sit under your teaching. Thanks again.
Hey, my pleasure entirely. The blessing is mine. You're the guys that made this possible. Goodbye, Robbie. See you, David and Christy.
One thing that I missed was indoor.
Andor, yeah, right. Andor, I don't have great imagery of Andor, but it's on the, it's kind of on the backside of Mount Moreh, in between Moreh and Tabor. Are you familiar with the area?
Yes, very.
Oh, excellent. Well, maybe more so than I am. I've yet to take that hike to get up to Andor, and that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to in my future.
Okay. Well, I was hoping you would kind of point it out.
Yeah, I do have some imagery on it, but it's from a considerable distance, and it's very fleeting. It's like passes by so quick that if you don't pause the video, you're not going to give people a chance to see it. I just don't have any really good imagery that I'm comfortable with sharing on Andor right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
James, it's an important location, and for no other reason than this. Two things. It helps us to understand that Saul was scared to death of the Philistines, but he didn't mind breaking the law of God and going behind enemy lines to get to that Baalat Ov, that we call witch of Andor. Another thing is this, that that's another example of people coming back from the dead at Mount Moreh. So you have the woman's son with Elisha, you have the woman's son with Jesus, and you have the prophet Samuel coming back from the dead to speak to King Saul. These are not accidents, the geographical accidents. There is a theme that's going on there around the hill of Moreh where, hey, this is interesting. It's called the Hill of Revelation, the Hill of Moreh, and it's where people come back from the dead. Fascinating, right?
Wow. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for bringing it up, man.
You have a great night. Okay.
Yes, sir. God bless.
All right. God bless you too.
Hello, James Miller.
Hello.
Hello, James Jr. or whoever. What's happened, Captain?
I'm learning.
I'm learning.
Awesome. Say, it's not past your bedtime, right? No, never.
Last day of school.
Huh?
Tell them today was your last day of school.
Today was my last day of school.
Congratulations. So there's nothing to get up for tomorrow, right? I don't know. How about like the rest of your life? Starts tomorrow. There is life after school. I'm a living proof of that.
Hey, Dr. Nunnally, can I ask you a question real fast?
Yes, please.
So I was just curious about the woman at the well
Yeah.
and the Samaria take. So do we get that they avoided Samaria because of her supposed astonished reaction to Jesus' communication with her? Is that where we kind of, think it's a little bit more out of the ordinary of what
Okay.
he's doing?
The passage that you're talking about, John 4, it
Yes, sir.
does have a parenthetical statement that says, how is it that you, a Jew, ask of me a drink, and I'm a Samaritan? And it has in parentheses, and it's part of the inspired text, for Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. So I think that what we've done is we've taken that and we've gone ahead and painted with broad brush and filled in the blanks, but we've done that without any evidence.
Gotcha.
By the way, Chava, where'd you get that name?
From Israel. My parents lived there for a while. My
Oh.
mom's best friend from there.
I gotcha. So do you go by Chava?
I do.
Or
I do.
Eve or
Nope, not Eve. Hava. Yep.
Chava? That's,
Yep.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chava. It's connected because, Eve in the Bible is called the mother of all living. It's connected with a word that is the root. The root of that name is chaya. It means to live, the mother of all living. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I had kids, I said I was failing my name. So
Not anymore, huh?
not anymore. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Mazal tov.
Thank you. Toda.
Tomomi. Tomomi?
Question. Hi.
Hi. Am I
Hi.
pronouncing it correctly?
Yes. Good morning. I'm in Japan.
You are in Japan. What time is it
Hello?
where you are?
Yeah.
Time.
In the 9 to 10:30 now, 10:40. And I'm actually curious about that at the beginning you said about the curfew. Yeah. Because I'm hairstylist. So I wonder who was it? I just missed what you said at the beginning.
Yes. It says in
Jesus married.
it says in the rabbis that she was a dresser of women's hair.
Mhm. Yeah.
At some point in the course, we're going to do a whole section on what can we know about Jesus from evidence outside the Bible, and there's a ton of it, and so
Wow.
we're going to go through that. We'll go back to Celsus and some of the rabbis and stuff, and we'll look at
Okay.
one tradition says that she was a spinstress, that she made clothing. Another
Mhm.
is that she was a dresser of women's hair. That's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, which I am. I'm hairdresser. So I was,
Then you are walking in a proud tradition of hairdressers that go all the way back to Mother Mary.
yeah, hope so. And then this is my hair salon. So
Oh, really?
yes.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll look forward to following weeks.
I do too.
I'm so appreciated. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. Tell everybody I
Thank you.
said hello in Japan.
Sure, why not? Okay. All right, bye-bye. I'm going back to work.
Please do. You got to make a living.
Yes.
God bless you.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
I see Daniel and Aurelia. I like the picture anyway.
Hello. I have really enjoyed the class.
Aurelia, am I saying that right?
Yes, you are. Aurelia.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Where was the picture taken?
We live in Fairhope, Alabama, which is near Gulf Shores, Alabama.
Uh-oh.
So, yes, we love it. So we spend a lot of time there.
We have some very good friends who are the pastors just up the road from you at Coastal Church.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Do you
yes.
know Chad and Jennifer Stafford?
I don't. We attend Three Circle Church there in Fairhope, but I have heard of Coastal Church and I have seen it.
Yeah,
So
they're great folks.
absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
you guys are living the dream there in God's country.
Well, we retired and moved to God's country, I guess.
Well,
So,
I was going to say, you do not have a South Alabama accent.
well, you know what? I grew up until I was about 10 or 11 in Mobile, Alabama, and then my father built tunnels and we moved north. So I quickly lost my accent because I was teased so much.
Oh,
So,
well,
yeah.
for that, I'm sorry. And
Yeah.
sometimes we do have to make accommodations with our mother tongue, right?
We do, absolutely. Thank you for a great class, and I
Sure.
look forward to seeing you next week.
Blessings to you and Dan, and I look forward to it as well.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. That kind of-
Dr. Nunnally, if you need a Southern accent, I can give you one.
Go ahead, man. Now we're cooking with grease.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, talk to me, Rod.
Well, I'm a pastor in Georgetown, South Carolina, but I did pastor in North Alabama for 10 years. So
You got it legal.
I got it both ways. Grew up in Georgia. So
All right, then you are so totally legal. You don't even have to get your passport stamped.
No. I've got it covered all the way. My wife and I, we go to Israel every other year and take a group. So
Do
we've
you
been there
really?
several times.
I'm there 6 to 7 months out of the year when COVID is not happening and teaching
Well, I
groups.
hear that.
And we have a marvelous time. I love every minute of it. Every group
Amen.
is
We're
my
big
favorite.
supporters of CMJ, David Pelleggi. We connect with them a lot. So
Do you? Well,
Yeah.
I bet you are. I'm looking forward to getting back to my home away from home in Israel.
I hear that, brother. We missed our trip this year because was our go year. So, and I've studied at JUC. I took one of my daughters. I have 7 children. I took one of my daughters in 2011 and we studied there. So
That is marvelous. I graduated in August of 1983 from JUC, and it literally changed the course of my life.
amen. I can agree with that.
Everything has been downstream from JUC. It was such a seminal time in the lives of everybody in my family. I've got my Southern Belle wife right
Wow.
here at my side. She's from Utica, Mississippi, population 603.
Oh,
And you guys speak the same language.
yes.
Y'all need no
I've got my-
interpreter.
I got my sweet wife over here. She's from Athens, Georgia. So
Go ahead now. Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
Is that right there on 85?
no,
Interstate 80?
Athens is it's in North Georgia.
All
I'm
right.
not going to take up all your time.
No,
you
that's,
said Southern accent. I had to give you.
hey, I love it. I appreciate it. Makes me feel right at home. I grew up in Virginia.
Every time I'm in Israel, they say, "Are you from Texas?"
My wife's family used to kid me about talking like a Yankee, quote unquote, down in Mississippi because I grew up in Virginia. That's seriously north. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Maybe to you, it wasn't to me.
Well, blessings to you, brother.
Blessings to you. Look
Sorry,
forward to
sir,
seeing you next
what-
week.
What years were you at JUC?
82 and 83.
Oh, okay. My dad graduated from 81. He was there
I was gonna
78
say
to
it was before you
81.
were- I was going to say it was before you were born. It has to be.
just a little bit, not too much. Just a little bit. Yeah. He was at JC with Dr. Young.
Dr.
Right under
Young.
Dr. Young.
Wow. That
Yeah.
goes back to the day.
Yeah.
That was
My dad
back to
actually
the day.
found Dr. Young after he passed away. My dad went in and checked on him, and he's the one that found him.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Man, what a story.
Mhm. Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
that, Lacey? Dr. George Jacomakis was the president when we got there. and
Yes.
left.
Yes.
So Dr. Jake.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I studied many days to the beat of his son Andrew's drums. That drove us all crazy, but it was all for good. Wouldn't
That's
trade
awesome.
it. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah.
Our little
Special
boy was,
place.
yeah, it is a special, still a special place. Our
Mhm.
little boy was 2 and turned 3 while we were living there.
Oh,
And,
fun.
we all cherished those times.
Yeah.
One day we were walking by the shore on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and our little boy reached down and he picked up some gravel and he threw it into the waters of the Sea of Galilee, just 3 years old. And he said, "Look, Mom, look, Dad, just like David did with Goliath."
Oh.
Doing a
Wow.
little integration there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
We have very fond memories.
Yeah.
Very fond memories.
Wade, I just wanted to say thank you for, I really enjoyed your talk.
Well, Philip, I appreciate that. And I hope that everything that we do is going to drive the nail. And,
Well,
and it's
I
gonna be
went,
helpful.
I heard your, you speak a few months ago, and I said, I'm taking this class.
Was that back in January at the seminar?
Yes. And you said an interesting thing about JUC on your life. And my son's Oliver said the same thing, because he's now going to be over there doing something.
Really?
Yeah. And he had said,
Is are you Mr. Hersey?
yeah, I am. I'm incognito here.
I see Philip H. Okay. Well,
Yeah, if you have any issues with Oliver, let me know.
you're not incognito anymore. You are totally on my radar
Yes,
screen.
I'm outed. Yeah, I'm outed. But
He and I figured that's what the H stood for.
yeah, you got that right. This is an interesting story. He never told anyone about this, but several years ago when he was visiting Israel, I'm not sure if it was when he was doing his master's with Trinity or something, and he went by JUC, and he felt such an attachment to the place. It's like, it was really weird. He couldn't explain it. And he thought, was he supposed to do something here? And he told me, he said later, he just recently told us, that when he was there, he actually started applying, had no idea what he was doing, for something. He was applying, didn't go through, of course. And then several years later, he ended up in that institution as the president. So
It's just, that's an incredible story.
And then that was just something that you couldn't have planned that, but that was, and he never said anything about that. I mean, that's not something you say about, well, I have this weird feeling,
Yeah, right.
People start looking at you kind of funny.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so,
Proof's in the pudding though, right?
yeah. And so just how it's worked out, just kind of interesting.
Well, he is a fine, not young, but younger man. I've already had multiple visits with him, all by Zoom, but we know each other now by face and
Right.
have corresponded a lot. And I am so looking forward to working with him further in the coming years. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you a very honest story. This is just between you and me and all the other 100 people that are still listening, but just between you and me and the fence.
Wait, Oliver's not on here, right? He said he might drop in tonight, but he's too busy.
He wouldn't hold this against me, and he even knows that this was the case. I was 2 days post-op when I did that seminar, and I don't really remember it.
Are you serious?
Don't remember it. Oh, I remember I was supposed to do it, but I don't remember anything that I said. All I have is, the computer files, of that
Right.
study about travel in Samaria. But I'm really glad that you were there and that you found something that was beneficial and decided that you wanted to take this class.
Yeah, it's just, it just still blows my mind that, all the stuff you heard about going through Samaria. I've never heard that ever since I was a kid,
Yeah.
And, well, they hated each other, so it's just, wow.
One of the things that I've learned, and I think I learned it really at my dad's supper table. He was a lawyer and then became the last like half or third of his career, he was a judge. And he just said, you always follow the evidence. You just keep on following the evidence and eventually you find truth.
That's right. Exactly.
And I have found that to be the case invariably. There's no exception to that rule. Follow the evidence and you find reality.
Mm-hmm.
It sometimes is not always what you want to find. I would love to be able to go along with the crowd, you know, but I can't do it on that, you know, Jewish travel in Samaria thing, because it's like there's tons of evidence on one side, there's zero evidence on the other side. Well, what are you going to do? You know, I got trapped by the evidence.
Trapped by the evidence. I mean, but the thing is, there's no evidence in the other direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got hemmed in. I don't have any option.
It's like, it's not just a little bit. I mean, you had like buckets of evidence, and I think you had probably a lot more that you never brought out.
I do. I give just the cream of the crop. You know, when we're studying something, it's the best stuff, the easiest to interpret, you know, the clearest and all that. If you have to stand on your head and hold your mouth just right, it kind of defeats the purpose. So
Wow.
That's what I try to focus on.
Yeah.
So I very much appreciate your encouragement.
Well, I thank you. I was really encouraged. I mean, you could have gone on for a few more hours, and hey, you know.
Believe me, I would love to.
I can tell. I can tell. And I've already found your YouTube channel. So, you know, I've got stuff I can get caught up on. So
That's wonderful.
Like, man, this guy's really good. How come he's only got 46 views? It's like, man, I mean, all these TV preachers out there, I mean, he's only got 46 views and this is like really good.
Well, you share the same question that we ask ourselves so often, is like, okay, what's going on out there? It's amazing what strikes a chord and it'll go all the way up over 16,000 views. It's amazing what won't even make it to 200. And
Don't even want to get me started on that.
I'm not a marketer, not interested in that. I'm not a PR person. I'm not interested in that either. I'm just putting out as much stuff and as good a stuff as I possibly can to help move the ball in people's lives. So whether they're pastors or they're, you know, professors or they're lay people or whatever, that stuff, we're just trying to pump it out, put as much out as we can, and then make sure that people have as easy access to it as possible. And that's the reason we're not interested in charging. We're not trying to be kingdom build. I'm not interested in I'm not interested in being famous. I don't want to be some big TV preacher. All I want to continue to pursue the truth.
Right.
Continue to pursue the truth.
Well, that shows. I appreciate that. So.
Well, I very much appreciate your encouragement.
I just thought, I don't know. I just had in my head that, man, I got to get me some more maps. I've always liked to do maps and, you know, look around. I mean, I've been in different places in the world. I always get some maps. And I'm going to go through the whole New Testament. I'm going through these maps. And, you know, I can just see you really opened my eyes a whole lot there. Some of that.
Well, you watch out, because before long you're going to be teaching Oliver things. And
I gave up on that, but it's just I just enjoyed it. Yeah, especially when you have a practical application right with the Bible and the geography and the place. And that's one of the things that Oliver that stirred him to pursue studies, was he wanted to look at the Bible from, you know, the context and the culture from which it was written. The Old
exactly.
Testament, not only the Old Testament, but the New Testament as well.
Absolutely.
And that drove him down that path. You know.
Yep. Me too. We're bitten by the same bug.
I see that you're the same way, and I really appreciate. I just like that kind of stuff. You know.
Awesome.
So
that's awesome. Is there anybody else that was waiting to say something? I don't want to cut you guys off because we kind of go on.
I'm sorry.
No. I'm sorry. I didn't want to cut anybody off if you were waiting in line to speak. Matt or Hubert or Jolie? Okay, you bet. Akil, you okay? Elvis has left the building. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign out. We can all go to bed.